Right, business. What a word. What a dangerous word these days. But I'm passionate about business, so I felt I had to talk a little bit about the movement that's happening and try and recruit you if you're not already recruited. When I think about business in a bad way, I think about extraction. I think about stripping the world of its resources, extracting every last ounce of goodness from its people, sweating the assets, asset stripping. There's a lot of stripping going on. Maybe I was kind of inferred by the life drawing earlier. But it's not good. It's about banks failing. It's about all of the nastiness that happens in business. And the fact is that it's not sustainable. That kind of business is not sustainable. It is not good enough, and it is not acceptable, and it is not sustainable. But there's something magical about business for me. There's something about independence, about freedom, about doing what we need to do and getting the results and following our passions. So I am massively optimistic and cheerful about business. And I want to lay out some of the principles, I think, that are in this movement that has already started and is gaining momentum every day. There were 3 principles when I put this talk together. And then in the end, one of my partners suggested that we put an E on the end. It was going to be HOP. But one of the things we do in business is we love acronyms. So it's HOPE. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is happiness. And George, I love your work with happiness. What a fantastic project. My journey with happiness started about 100 meters away from where we are today. After a conversation with my coach, and I'm aware that that is also quite a nauseating concept for many of us in Britain, he ended up asking me, well, what do you think the meaning of life is? And I was absolutely stopped dead in my tracks. I hadn't the faintest idea. So I started asking people that I knew, what's the meaning of life? And I asked Danny, one of our team members, Danielle, sitting on the grass near the pier in Brighton, and she said without a moment's hesitation, to be happy. And that really turned me on to this idea of happiness. And when I think about happiness in business, the two don't match that often. I think about the Sunday night feeling, the Monday morning feeling, the misery on public transport, surrounded by other grim-faced people on their way to a job they hate. That's not good enough, and it's changing. And it needs to change. This is from some US Bureau of Labor statistics that they take every year about where we spend our time as adults. The pillowy whiteness is sleeping. How fantastic. We spend most of our time sleeping. I think that's good. The next biggest thing we spend our time doing is working. The yellowness is the working. And the next thing after that is TV, but that's a different talk. If we're spending all this time working, doesn't happiness matter? This fantastic Australian woman who worked for many years in palliative care, called Bronnie Ware, put together an article that some of you may have read, called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. I wish I didn't work so hard. Particularly prevalent, she says, in men. And fifth, I wish that I'd let myself be happier. This stuff matters. Some of you will also know about the People's Republic of Bhutan, where when the king took over from his deceased father, he reoriented the society around happiness, gross national happiness. He invented a new phrase. How cool is that? And that's another thing we get to do in business. Bhutan is a remarkable experiment. I don't know anything about happiness compared to people who make it their day-to-day job. But studies show that Bhutan is in the top 20 of happiest countries in the world when it is one of the least developed, and certainly the least developed in that top 20. So one of the little experiments we started in our workplace is that we measure happiness every day. Bizarrely, although we're technologists, we didn't think about doing an app. We just have buckets. And this idea was put together by a number of our partners and a guy who calls himself the Chief Happiness Officer in Denmark. And so every day we take a ball from the main bucket and we drop it in the either happy or unhappy bucket. And it's really powerful for us. It's just a little company and a little experiment, but we think it's powerful Not only is there the individual perspective of raising your awareness every day, what was my day like? But also, this is open information. This is powerful. Different people, whoever wants to, add up the numbers and put it on a piece of paper on the door as you go out. Every time you go out that door, you see happy and unhappy. And when we're happy, we ask, why were we happy last week? And when we're unhappy, we say, why were we unhappy? And what we want to do is we want to plot happiness and profit and understand that. That would be cool. Imagine happiness at work. Imagine business that took happiness seriously. When I talk to some of my peers about these concepts, entrepreneurs and MDs with their own businesses, they raise an eyebrow. It's a cute concept, a nice idea, but deeply subversive. But the movement I belong to doesn't care about that. The next concept is about openness in business. When I think about business and openness, sometimes I think, again, they might be opposites. I think about a tightly fixed, closed briefcase with all the really juicy information inside of it. No one really knows what's there. I think about the mushroom treatment. You know, keep them in the dark, feed them crap, or even more appropriate to this seaside city, the seagull treatment. Come in a flap, crap over everyone, fly out again, leave them to clear up the mess. But that is changing, and you know it. WikiLeaks is wreaking huge influence on governments and is turning its sights on business. But even more than just that, which may be another thing that happened in the history of the world, Linus's law, the guy who invented Linux software, which runs most of the internet, so his law is, given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. A bug is an error in programmer parlance, but what it means is, what Linus is saying is, if enough of us try and solve a problem, we can do it together. So why don't we harness openness in business? There are some fantastic experiments happening. There's a company called Mint Digital in London who I love their Christmas bonus scheme. 50% of your bonus was given to you equally in the team, and the other 50% you could allocate wherever you wanted in the team, to give to one person or to spread evenly. Spreading evenly was a really common strategy. But other good things happened, like unsung heroes came to the fore. People who would have been behind the scenes got well rewarded by their peers for all of that hard work. How can we harness more openness in business and make business better? In our company, there's a page on the intranet. Everyone knows how much everyone else earns. And then you look at the openness of companies like John Lewis and other employee-owned companies around the world where people truly participate in that business. But there are things that hold us back. I can't pretend that we've got this nailed. For a long time, one idea I've had knocking around is just asking our FD to publish our results every month when we produce the management accounts for the board meeting. It would just be a short blog post, how much money we made or lost, the narrative, why, what's going on, what are we concerned about, how much money is there in the bank. But something holds me back. Embarrassment, fear of looking stupid. That's embarrassment as well, isn't it? Fear of looking like we're doing too well. So it's hard, and it's a journey. But imagine if that was more normal. Imagine if, and these are the things that people talk about anyway, aren't they? This is the question that everyone's second-guessing anyway. How much is that person earning? How much have they brought them in on? Why don't we just get those questions out of the way and get on with the job? And then there's participation, and this is a really good reason to be cheerful and optimistic. Against a backdrop of recession and challenging times in business, great things are happening. When I had my first and only job, I remember I started reading American entrepreneurial websites, Inc.com, FastCompany.com, the websites of popular magazines in the States. And I read this amazing story about a cardboard box factory. Cardboard box factories, not normally that interesting. But what was interesting about this company was in a commoditized market where a box is a box, they employed participative management, democratic management, to get an edge over their competition. These two brothers who had gone to Harvard, that most blue-blooded of institutions, were inspired by a Brazilian businessman called Ricardo Semler to open the books. So all of the cardboard box factory workers knew where the money was going. They made key decisions together, sometimes against the proposals of the management, sometimes against their own interests, but for the greater good. So that turned me on to the original book, The Root, the source of this wonderful ideas. And I read it. And actually, loads of our team have read it. And it's an inspiring book, and many of you will have read it. But if you haven't, please read it. It's a fantastic story of a company that broke new ground in every one of these areas. Bad things happened in the Brazilian economy during the story of this book and during the story of these different management experiments. Workers agreed to wage cuts, profits, their share of profits went up to reflect that. Management salaries were cut. Employees were given the right to approve every item of expenditure. And the company survived these brutal storms and thrives today as a major player. But this isn't even niche stuff anymore. It's not even subversive. It's not small. The current kind of darling of the business press is a book called Employees First, Customers Second. That in itself in business is a subversive statement. We all know as business people that customers come first. But no, this 60,000 person Indian company is saying, no, that's not the way you do it. You put people first. You put your people first. And then the direct consequence is better service for the customer. How fantastic. And World Blue, an association we're involved with, their goal is to create 1 billion people working in companies that are democratically managed. This is a movement that is happening. It's happening now. And it's unstoppable. But it's not easy. I took this photo of our kitchen sink the day before Tom needed the slides to be finally submitted. Ah! I'm like, we're a democratic company, someone do the dishes! It's hard. The controlling part of me just wants to go and kick butt and find out whose porridge bowl was left sitting there. Who's the persistent teabagger in the sink? It's not easy, but it matters. Imagine participation in your business or your organization or the businesses that affect the lives of the people around you. Imagine the energy, the commitment, the talents, the results that we could get together to solve some of the problems that have been touched on today. And finally, to energy. What kind of businesses do we want in the world? It's too easy to point and say, big, bad, giant, evil company. We need to stand up and make a change. And we can. Thank you.